Union is not found in another person. It is born in the fire you carry within. Sexual energy, this primal, creative current, was never meant to be reduced to lust, reproduction, or fleeting pleasure. It is the original spark of creation, the same pulse that spins galaxies into spirals, that draws the tide toward the moon, that calls two souls into embrace. It is the current of life itself, waiting to be remembered. But here is the paradox. The more you chase union outside yourself, the more it slips away. The more you grasp for it in another body, in another relationship, in another fleeting high, the more it dissolves like water through your fingers. True union, the union your soul aches for, does not begin in the arms of another. It begins in the silence of your own being. Think of how this energy often plays out in daily life. It shows up as longing, as attraction, as hunger for closeness. You scroll endlessly through apps, searching for someone to ignite the fire. You enter relationships, only to repeat old wounds. You confuse chemistry with destiny. You confuse craving with love. For some, sexual energy is buried, suppressed by shame, silence, or conditioning. For others, it spills everywhere, seeking pleasure after pleasure, but never finding fulfillment. In both cases, the result is the same: emptiness. A sense that something deeper is missing. And this is why so many relationships feel fragile. They flare like sparks, but burn out quickly. They intoxicate, then collapse under the weight of unmet expectations. Because when you do not understand the sacred nature of sexual energy, you either misuse it or neglect it. And in both cases, you block yourself from the gateway to the divine. Carl Jung once wrote that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Sexual energy is not just attraction, it is alchemy. It is the raw material of transformation. But here is the secret. This alchemy does not begin with two, it begins with one. When the masculine and feminine forces within you, the active and the receptive, the sun and the moon, begin to dance together, something extraordinary awakens. You stop seeking completion in the outer world. You begin to feel whole. From this wholeness, every outer union becomes sacred, not desperate. Love becomes a gift, not a need. Mystics across the world knew this truth. The tantric sages of India, the Taoist masters of China, the alchemists of old. They all spoke of sexual energy not as sin, but as sacred fire. They understood what modern society has forgotten. This energy is the golden key, the pathway to higher states of consciousness, the bridge between human and divine. Imagine your body as a temple. At the base burns a flame. It flickers with desire, with vitality, with the impulse to create. For most, this flame never rises. It stays trapped, heavy, feeding only survival and fleeting urges. But when tended, when honored, the flame climbs upward. Like a serpent of light, it spirals through the spine, awakening centers of power, compassion, vision. By the time it reaches the crown, what began as lust has become light. The human has touched the divine. This is the alchemy of union, not repression, not indulgence, transformation. The river of energy turning from chaos into cosmos, from craving into creation, from separation into sacredness. So perhaps the question is not, how do you find the right partner? But rather, how do you awaken the union already living inside you? Because when you awaken it, everything changes. Relationships stop being about filling your emptiness and start becoming about amplifying your wholeness. Intimacy becomes less about possession and more about presence. Love becomes not a contract, but a communion. This is why sexual energy, misunderstood, feels dangerous. But embraced with awareness, it becomes the golden thread that connects you to the universe. It is the doorway where I and you dissolve into one. The place where separation disappears and only oneness remains. And so remember this: Sacred union is not something you chase. It is something you awaken, first within yourself, then in the space between, until the boundary between inner and outer vanishes, and you discover what was true all along. You were never separate from the divine to begin with. We live in a world that glorifies pleasure, yet hides from power. Everywhere you look, sexual energy is displayed, marketed, consumed, on screens, in songs, in images. But almost no one speaks of what it truly is. We reduce it to hormones, to instincts, to a fleeting rush that passes through the body. And yet, the ancients looked at the same current and called it divine. They spoke of it as the hidden flame, the portal to awakening, the sacred river that could drown you in chaos or carry you to the stars. For many, this river does not feel like divinity. It feels like confusion, like hunger, like a shadow that won't let go. Maybe you felt it too, that restless craving that promises fulfillment, but leaves you emptier than before. The attraction that burns hot and fast, only to collapse into silence when the spark fades. The cycle of desire, release, and regret that seems to repeat like a song stuck on loop. Some hide from it altogether, burying their fire under layers of shame, guilt, or fear of judgment. Others let it spill everywhere, seeking conquest after conquest, mistaking indulgence for intimacy. Both paths leave you hollow. Both paths leave you longing for something deeper. The paradox is that sexual energy is both the most primal and the most sacred force alive. It is the root of survival, and it is the crown of transcendence. It is the seed from which every new life is born, and it is the current that lifts consciousness beyond the limits of flesh. Modern science touches the edges of this truth. Neuroscience reveals that when sexual energy stirs, the brain floods with chemistry, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, the molecules of creativity, bonding, trust. But something even more profound happens when that current is not wasted, when it is directed with awareness. The brain synchronizes, creativity blooms, flow opens. The body remembers its original design, not only to reproduce life, but to radiate it. The Taoists called this current Jing, essence, the root of vitality. The yogis called it Shakti, the goddess energy, the power of creation herself. Across cultures, across centuries, the wisdom echoed like a mantra. Honor this energy, and it becomes medicine. Ignore it, misuse it, and it becomes poison. Think of it like fire. Left unchecked, it scorches, devours, destroys. But contained in a hearth, fire warms, nourishes, transforms raw into sustenance. Sexual energy is that fire. Unconscious, it burns. Conscious, it illumines. Or imagine a river. If it floods wildly, it sweeps away everything in its path. If it is dammed too tightly, it grows stagnant, toxic, heavy. But when guided wisely, it irrigates the land, sustains life, carves valleys of beauty into stone. Your energy is that river. The question is never whether it flows. It always flows. The question is how you guide it. Here is the shift. Sexual energy is not only about sex. It is the essence of creation itself. The same current that fuels intimacy also fuels art, poetry, invention, spiritual vision. When you feel desire, what you are truly feeling is life itself knocking at your door, asking to move through you, to create, to connect, to express. But when you mistake the current for the craving, you miss the deeper invitation. You chase bodies when it is soul you are hungry for. You chase pleasure when it is presence you are starving for. And so the truth is this: your energy does not long for release. It longs for transformation. Imagine learning not to repress this current, not to spill it, but to hold it, to breathe it upward, to let it climb the spine, to open the heart, to awaken vision. Suddenly, your presence deepens, your creativity expands, your relationships stop being transactions and begin to feel like transmissions. You no longer move as a seeker chasing wholeness. You become a vessel radiating it. The emptiness dissolves, not because you found someone else to fill it, but because you finally discovered the well inside was overflowing all along. From here, love no longer feels like a need. It becomes a gift. Desire stops being hunger and becomes devotion. Attraction stops being a restless search and becomes sacred recognition. This is the doorway to the deeper path, the place where energy no longer binds you, but liberates you. So the question becomes clear. If this current is so powerful, how do you awaken it consciously? How do you turn fire into light, river into song, craving into creation? The answer begins not in the body of another, but in the dance within your own. The union of masculine and feminine that lives inside you, the eternal lovers waiting to be remembered. Before you can unite with another, you must first discover the union already living within you. Inside every being, two forces are always at play: the masculine and the feminine, the sun and the moon, the current that reaches outward and the current that receives. They are not about gender, not about body, but about energy. They live in everyone, shaping the way you act, the way you feel, the way you love. When one dominates, life feels imbalanced. Too much of the masculine, and you become rigid, always pushing, always controlling, afraid of surrender. Too much of the feminine, and you drift without anchor, lost in feeling, unable to act. But when these two forces meet in harmony, something miraculous awakens. It is the inner marriage, the sacred union of opposites, the original alchemy that transforms desire into devotion, chaos into creation. For many, this dance is forgotten. We grow up in cultures that praise action, achievement, control, the masculine principle, while quietly dismissing softness, receptivity, intuition, the feminine principle. Or we fall into the opposite trap, dissolving into emotion without direction, surrendering without structure. In both cases, the inner lovers drift apart and the soul begins to ache. Because wholeness cannot be found in one half of the dance. Look closely, and you'll see this imbalance reflected everywhere. In relationships that turn into battles of control and submission. In societies that worship power but starve for compassion. In individuals who chase endlessly, never able to rest. Or those who dream endlessly, never able to move. The outer world mirrors the inner fracture. But within you is the possibility of reunion. To feel the strength of your inner masculine, focused, decisive, protective, without letting it turn into domination. To feel the softness of your inner feminine, fluid, intuitive, nurturing, without letting it collapse into passivity. When the two recognize each other, when they begin to dance, your energy shifts. It stops leaking outward in search of completion. It begins to spiral inward, upward, radiating as wholeness. This is what the mystics meant when they spoke of androgyny, of the sacred marriage, of the union of heaven and earth inside the human heart. They knew that the real love story is not the one written between two bodies, but the one unfolding within your own. Every outer relationship is simply a reflection of this inner balance. If your masculine within you rejects your feminine, you will reject it in others. If your feminine within you mistrusts your masculine, you will mistrust it in others. The way you love yourself becomes the script by which you love the world. Picture this union like a cosmic dance. The masculine is the riverbank, holding form and direction. The feminine is the water, flowing with movement and life. Alone, the riverbank is dry and lifeless. Alone, the water floods into chaos. Together, they create a river, alive, moving, nourishing everything it touches. Your being is this river. The question is, do the banks and the waters within you embrace, or do they fight? When you begin to honor both, a shift occurs. You no longer cling to others to provide what you are missing. You no longer fear intimacy as a threat to your freedom. Instead, love becomes an overflow, a resonance, a recognition of the same dance happening in another soul. Desire softens into devotion. Intimacy becomes communion, and union turns into a mirror of the cosmos itself. And this is the hidden power of sexual energy. It is not only the spark that draws one body to another, it is the stage where the masculine and feminine within you meet, merge, and rise together. Every moment of attraction is an invitation, not to lose yourself in another, but to find yourself more deeply in the reflection. When the inner lovers unite, the outer lovers transform. Relationship stops being about filling a void and starts being about amplifying wholeness. Connection stops being about need and begins to feel like creation. This is the alchemy of union, not just the merging of two bodies, but the merging of two worlds, two currents, two cosmic forces made flesh. And so the path is clear. To awaken divine union outside, you must awaken it inside. To embrace love fully, you must embrace both halves of your own being. And when this happens, when your inner sun and moon rise together, you will feel it. The river turning golden, the fire becoming light, the longing dissolving into luminous presence. This is where the journey deepens. Because once the inner marriage is remembered, the energy no longer stays within. It begins to spiral upward, beyond self, beyond body, reaching toward the infinite. And that is where the divine connection begins to open. There comes a moment when desire itself begins to shift. At first, sexual energy feels like fire in the lower body, raw, urgent, insistent. It pulls you outward, toward touch, toward union with another. It feels physical, but beneath the surface, it is something much more. It is the same fire that fuels the stars, compressed into the human form. And like any fire, it can burn wildly, or it can be refined into light. This is the secret of transmutation, to take what is raw and transform it into something radiant, to allow the energy of desire to rise instead of fall, to create instead of consume, to awaken instead of exhaust. For centuries, mystics have taught this art. The yogis spoke of Kundalini, the serpent of fire that lies coiled at the base of the spine, waiting to ascend. The Taoists spoke of the microcosmic orbit, the circulation of essence through the body, refining it into spirit. Alchemists whispered of turning lead into gold, but the real lead was unrefined energy, and the real gold was consciousness. When this energy rises, the body becomes an instrument of awakening. The lower centers of survival and desire are not rejected, but transformed. The current climbs through the heart, awakening compassion. It moves through the throat, awakening truth. It expands into the crown, awakening union with the cosmos. What began as lust becomes light. What began as craving becomes creation. Imagine it like a flame traveling through a lamp. At the base, the oil burns heavy and smoky, but as it climbs, the smoke clears, the flame steadies, and eventually it becomes a pure, golden light that illuminates the entire room. Sexual energy is this flame. Left at the base, it smolders. Raised with awareness, it enlightens. But this transformation does not happen by force. It does not happen through repression, nor through indulgence. It happens through presence, through awareness, through the willingness to feel the fire fully without clinging to it, without running from it. Breath becomes the guide. Intention becomes the channel. And slowly, what once felt like a restless ache becomes a river of radiance flowing through every cell. This is why those who have tasted this path speak of it with reverence. They know that sexual energy is not an enemy to be fought, nor a weakness to be ashamed of. It is sacred power, the closest thing to divinity hidden in flesh. The very energy that creates new life also creates higher life, the birth of awareness, the awakening of soul. Think of a tree. Its roots sink deep into the soil, drawing nourishment from the earth. Its trunk rises, steady and strong. Its branches reach upward, opening to the light of the sun. Without roots, the tree cannot stand. Without branches, it cannot grow. Sexual energy is like the roots. It grounds you, it fuels you, It feeds your vitality. But when it rises, it becomes the branches, stretching into the infinite, touching the divine. The tree is whole only when both are honored. When you begin to experience this alchemy, life itself feels different. Creativity flows where there was once stagnation. Intuition awakens where there was once confusion. Love radiates where there was once longing. Even your presence shifts. People feel something in you, something luminous, something magnetic. They may not understand it, but they sense it. The fire that has become light, the river that has become song. And yet the beauty of this path is that it is not reserved for mystics or saints. It is the birthright of every human being. The energy is already within you, waiting. The flame is already lit. All that changes is how you meet it. Do you let it burn you? Do you let it drain you? Or do you allow it to rise, to transform you, to carry you into the mystery of union? When you choose the third path, when you learn to transmute instead of release, you step into the heart of sacred alchemy. You realize that the very force you once feared or misused is the same force that will set you free. And in that moment, you glimpse the truth. Every desire, every attraction, every fire in the body was never just about the body. It was always a call to return to the divine. And so the journey continues. Because once this energy begins to rise, it does not stop at personal transformation. It begins to dissolve the illusion of separation itself. It begins to reveal the truth that union was never between two bodies or even two souls. It was always the reunion of the human and the infinite. When the current of energy rises beyond the body, a new dimension of love begins to open. It is no longer just about union with another person, nor even about balancing the forces within yourself. It becomes a union with the vast, invisible presence that has always surrounded you. The divine, the cosmos, the infinite. Call it God, Source, Spirit, or simply the mystery. It is the silent companion of every breath you take, waiting to be recognized. Sexual energy is the key that unlocks this recognition. Why? Because it is the most powerful force you carry. It has the strength to create life, to stir longing, to move you beyond reason. And when it is transmuted, when it rises, it has the strength to break through the illusion of separation itself. Imagine for a moment that your body is an instrument. Each energy center is a string, vibrating at its own pitch. Most of us live only in the lower notes: survival, craving, fear, desire. But when the current of energy climbs, it begins to awaken higher strings, higher tones, until suddenly, the whole instrument vibrates as one. You no longer feel like a fragment, you feel like a symphony. And the one playing the music is not only you, it is existence itself breathing through you. This is why mystics across traditions speak of union in the language of love. The Sufis sang of it as the beloved, the one kiss that could dissolve the self. Christian mystics spoke of the bridal chamber of the soul, the marriage of the human with the divine. Yogis described samadhi, the melting of individuality into pure consciousness. The language differs, but the experience is the same: to feel the current of life itself moving through you, to the point where there is no longer you and it, only the dance. In these moments, desire is not destroyed. It is fulfilled in a way the body alone could never contain. You begin to sense that every attraction you ever felt, every longing, every hunger, was a shadow of this greater union. That what you sought in the embrace of another was always a glimpse of the embrace of the infinite. That the fire in your body was always a spark from a much greater flame calling you home. Picture two rivers merging. At first, they are separate streams winding their own paths, carrying their own colors. But when they meet, they become one current, inseparable, flowing to the same sea. This is what divine union feels like. Your energy, your longing, yourself, dissolving into the vast ocean of presence. You lose nothing, yet gain everything. You do not vanish, but you no longer stand apart. You are the drop, and you are the ocean. You are the lover, and you are the beloved. And when you touch this space, even for a moment, life can never look the same again. Suddenly, love is not something you chase. It radiates from you. Connection is not something you beg for. It is the natural state of being. Loneliness evaporates, not because someone else has filled the gap, but because you realize there was never a gap to begin with. You were always part of the whole. You simply forgot. The beauty is that this union does not demand perfection. It does not ask you to become a saint, to escape the body, or to deny your humanity. On the contrary, it asks you to embrace it fully, to feel every pulse of desire, every ache of longing, every breath of life, and to offer it upward, to let it expand beyond the limits of flesh. Your humanity becomes the gateway, not the obstacle. Your desire becomes the prayer, not the sin. This is the true alchemy, not escaping the fire, but letting it illuminate the sky. Not rejecting desire, but seeing through it to its source. Every moment of attraction becomes a chance to remember. Every longing becomes a thread pulling you back to the center. Every union, whether inner or outer, becomes a reflection of the ultimate union, the soul melting into the infinite embrace of existence itself. And when you live from here, every touch, every breath, every gaze carries a different weight. You are no longer trying to take from life. You are allowing life to move through you. You are no longer trying to hold on. You are letting go into a love so vast it cannot be contained. This is the sacred mystery the ancients guarded. The reason sexual energy was treated with reverence, not because it was dangerous to be feared, not because it was shameful to be hidden, but because it was holy. It was the doorway to God, the secret river that could carry a soul from flesh to infinity, from longing to liberation. And so the question is no longer, what do you do with this energy? The question becomes, will you dare to let it lead you all the way home? If you allow yourself to walk this path, life begins to transform in ways that words can only point toward. The restless chase that once ruled your heart starts to quiet. The cycle of craving and release, the hunger that never seemed to end, begins to dissolve. You realize that what you were chasing was never outside. It was always the echo of something waiting within. Suddenly, the energy that once felt heavy becomes luminous. The longing that once felt painful becomes beautiful. It no longer drives you outward in desperation. It draws you inward into a deeper intimacy with yourself, with others, with the entire fabric of existence. Even the simplest moments, a breath of wind on your skin, the gaze of a stranger, the rhythm of your heartbeat, begin to shimmer with sacredness. Everything feels like a love letter from the universe, written only for you. Relationships shift too. Where once there was attachment and fear, there is now devotion and freedom. Love stops being about possession and becomes about presence. Desire stops being about taking and becomes about giving. Intimacy becomes less about bodies colliding and more about souls recognizing themselves in each other. When two beings meet from this space, their union is not just physical, it is cosmic. A reminder that two sparks are never truly separate, that they were always flames of the same eternal fire. And creativity flows in ways you never imagined. Because sexual energy is not only about physical union, it is the essence of creation itself. The same current that births a child can birth a song, a vision, a new way of living. When you channel this energy into art, into service, into your daily actions, life becomes an endless act of creation. Every gesture becomes infused with purpose, every word with power, every silence with depth. You are no longer just living. You are creating, shaping, radiating. The truth is, nothing outside you has changed. The world is still the same. The seasons still turn. The sun still rises. People still move through their dramas and desires. But your perception is reborn. You see through the surface into the essence. You see the divine dance in every face, every movement, every moment. And that vision changes everything. Because when you live as if everything is sacred, life reveals itself as sacred. This is the alchemy of union. To take the most primal force within you and allow it to lift you into the most transcendent realization. To discover that your body is not an obstacle, but a temple. That your desire is not a weakness, but a prayer. That your energy is not something to hide or waste, but to honor, to guide, to awaken. And if you carry nothing else from this journey, carry this: you are already whole. The union you seek is already alive inside you. Every longing is just a reminder to return. Every desire is just a whisper from the divine, calling you back to the source. You do not need to escape yourself. You only need to embrace yourself so fully that nothing remains separate. So take a breath. Feel the fire in your body. Feel the pulse in your chest. Feel the quiet vastness surrounding you. This is it. The gateway, the mystery, the union. Not tomorrow. Not after you perfect yourself. Not after you find the right person. Now. Always now. And if these words have stirred something in you, let them linger. Let them plant a seed. Let them remind you, in the moments when you forget, that you are not broken, you are not lacking. You are a living flame of the divine. If this resonated with you, stay connected. Not for the algorithm, but for your own alignment. Because every reminder you allow in, every reflection you welcome, helps you remember what you already are. Like and subscribe, not as an act of habit, but as a vow to yourself, to keep walking this path, to keep honoring the fire, to keep awakening the union. Because the journey is not about becoming something new, it is about remembering what has always been true. You are the river, you are the fire, you are the union, you are the divine connection you have been seeking all along.